All right, thank you so much for staying with Daybreak. This is Social Square, where we give the youth a chance to speak about matters of national importance, politics, and everything in between there. And they are joining me in studio, people who don't need an introduction. Alex Matere, convener, youth for BBI. Agnes Ibarra, policy and governance expert, is here. And Arnold Maliba, executive director, Open Future Hub, which is OFH. Thank you so much for making time. And Alex, I'll start with you. We've been seeing a lot of meetings lately from different quarters in the political field. What do you make of them? We saw Raila the other day meeting Gideon Moi and Muhoho Kenyatta. We saw DP Ruto, your friend, meeting Oparanya.
First, let me appreciate Trevor for having me here. Secondly, it is actually expected that we see the kind of political movements that you are seeing happening currently. And this is from the backdrop that first, there are no political rallies. So basically, it constricts the political actors to only having the kind of boardroom engagement that they continue having. And it's a build-up. It's definitely a build-up, having in mind that we are going to have elections. If we stick by what the Constitution says, then probably we have about 15 or so months to the next elections. And therefore, this is the time where coalitions are going to be mooted, alliances have to be formed, and also people have to sit down and see which side of the political divide they want to associate themselves to. That said and done, I think also it's important to notice that the current conversation that we used to have about BBI has really gone down, has really hit a snag because of the bill that has been presented in Parliament. And therefore, I want to probably preempt the kind of conversations that are going to be there. It's basically based on what next for BBI. And that's why you see political actors meeting and having that kind of discussion. As we build up also to 2022, BBI is also part and parcel of the agenda of their meetings that they are going to have.
But have you seen the youth in all those meetings you're talking about?
That basically is part of the problem that we have in this country. Because if you see the political actors that are meeting now are the same people who were there during Moi's time. If you look at the photos that the TBTs during Moi's regime, the same people who used to be with him are the same ones who used to be with Kibaki, and the same ones who are going to be also around Uhuru Kenyatta, and who are also going to decide the kind of the political trajectory this country is taking. And therefore, that one actually gives a glimpse of what we expect, and also it's a warning shot to the youth of this country that if we do not strategize, if we do not come together, and if again we do not scheme to be able to be on the table for decision making and resource allocation and political trajectory of this country, then we are going to be left out.
Yeah. Agnes, what do you make of these political meetings that we're seeing? The most unlikely of politicians seem to be meeting now.
Thank you, Trevor, for having me this morning. I'd like maybe to ask you to allow me to deviate a little bit. I think I'll do the girl child a great injustice if I don't take this opportunity to congratulate our top 3 candidates of the class of 2020, the KCP students. I want to start off by congratulating Faith, Yvette, and Angel for emerging as the top 3 candidates in this year's KCPE exams. And I want to congratulate them because, you know, amid such a pandemic and the uncertainty of it all, they managed to have the courage and they were brave enough to sit for the exams and excel. And I think maybe, Trevor, another thing important to note is that you see that when we registered the performances, the public schools really did well, unlike the previous year. So I'm also congratulating the Ministry of Education that is being led by C.S. Magoha. And maybe to come to your question, Trevor, for me and any other person out there who has been keen on the political environment and the political happenings of this country, you realize that coalition building is a major aspect of our political landscape, and most of the governments are made through coalitions. And right now we are looking at most of these machinations shaping up. But for me, I would like to talk about the coalitions as a young person, and I believe that as much as we are seeing these people meeting, for me, what I'll keep a keen eye on would be which is the best coalition, who are the best personalities that are coming together for the greater good of this country. And Trevor, allow me to also go deeper into this and talk about the BBI. For me, I would throw my weight and I would garner support for all of those personalities who have been supporting the BBI, because I believe that the handshake, the supporters of the handshake, the supporters of the BBI have the greatest intentions in their heart for this country. So whatever coalition that comes up from the supporters of this great historical movement, I would throw my weight behind it.
Are you concerned about the political arithmetic that's going on? It's the same people, like Alex said. There's no one different there. There's no young person. I haven't seen you in one of those meetings.
Maybe the camera people don't focus enough, but I've managed to get myself in most of those spaces, Trevor. But maybe something that is leaving our focus. I believe that political careers are just like any other careers. People work towards these careers, people invest in these careers, and I believe when you look at even the Chief Justice, the ones that are being interviewed, those are people who have been in the legal field for 30 years, 40 years, and I believe if politics is the same. Trevor, so much can also be said about the media industry. We don't see very new faces. We see people who have established themselves in the media industry, and I think also in politics it would be unfair to expect that any new entrant would come and emerge as a key principle in our politics.
But shouldn't it be deliberate for the leaders to at least involve the young people? They say the leaders of tomorrow. Tomorrow is not here yet.
No, I'm seated here next to Alex, and both of us have worked in the youth space for quite some time. And I believe that we have managed to negotiate for space. We have contributed a lot in the movement right now, especially when you're talking about the BBI and the youth gains. We are among the people who championed for most of those things that went into that document, Trevor. Most of the proposals that were done that are going to affect the lives of the young people, we championed for the same. And I believe once the things shape up, we will make sure that we are on the table, because, Trevor, you know what he said, if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. And I believe that young people are going to come together as we have before to negotiate for our space.
Okay. Arnold, what do you think of these political coalitions and the meetings we are seeing going on right now?
Well, that 13.7 million young people who actually form 67% of the voters in this country have not shown up on those photos that are actually splashing the headlines, speaks to the problem Alex earlier on alluded to, that whereas the people aged between 18 and 35, who are essentially almost, actually 68% of the voters, the registered voters, according to IBC's numbers, you've not seen any of them making a headline. All the guys we are seeing are actually people who were there in 1992, the young turks in 1992, that is 30 years ago. That the biggest number of people who vote and decide the trajectory and the direction of this country, in everything, by the way, the people who woke up in the morning to ensure that Citizen is working, actually people like yourself going down. There are very few older guys around here. I've gone around and I've not seen a lot of them. Almost 90% of the people who woke up here, the people who actually make the cogs of the economy run, and even our politics are young people, but they don't show up anywhere. We can actually see, if you see the OCA, One Kenya Alliance, you can see all of them. In my description, I actually describe them as the YK92, but the house Negro wing. You look at Tanga, you actually see the YK92, but the field Negroes. Now, on this other side, you actually can see young people, the progressives of 1992, the Railas of this world, the Mkhesa Kituis of this world, and others. So you look at the 1992 cabal, now trying to decide the 2022 fate of a nation. And young people like myself and Alex and others, even as Agi talks about cameras not capturing her, I know the spaces she would be in would be the third, fourth layer outside there. So that is the challenge we have. But we cannot say that that is how politics works out. Because politics has got three important P's that all as young people we do know. The first P is that you need to be present, presence. If we are not present in those spaces, I can tell you we are not even part and parcel of the food that is actually being eaten on the menu, because what is normally eaten on the menu, the political menu, one time too many is actually our money, the exchequer. We are just enablers. The other P is actually publicity. A few young people are actually public enough to be public and actually have that profile that will actually help them get recognized and probably command a following. Then the last one is actually positioning. positioning is actually just as important as presence. So positioning is now where Agi is coming in. Agi speaks about whatever coalition will come up and is supporting BBI, that is the one that she supports. And that again reflects the problem of we young people in politics, that we have already decided whom we shall vote for. The reasons why we will vote for them will come back, will actually come later on. We will justify why we are voting for those people, but we already have decided which side we are going to vote for, because again, as a nation, we are actually a republic, but not yet a nation. We are a federation of very many ethnicities. So naturally, Agi coming from Embu would want to align with things that go towards that end. Alex and myself coming from the far west would also be tempted to also look up. But we, the people in the West, are actually very liberal. We are Kenya's first-born.
I see how you're trying to amend that statement. But Agnes, what do the young people actually need? Because you see, and this is a reality. Even the Deputy President mentioned it yesterday, that if Raila Odinga ran, that would be his worthy opponent. The same politicians I've been with here have also said the exact same thing. They're not mentioning any young person. Now, we can either decide to bury our heads in the sand and claim that they are just speaking to themselves, but that is actually the reality. What do the young people need to change this political dynamics and even arithmetics? What is it that they need that they're not getting?
Trevor, I think for us to address this issue, we have to recognize that even in the background and the backdrop of things, the young people have always had, there's been an issue of the exclusion of young people, politically, socially, and economically. And I believe that I can say authoritatively that young people right now, I think most of it for them is access to opportunities. It does not have to be necessarily what we're talking about today. Young people right now, the major problem is they want work, they want money in their pockets, they want access to credit. Yeah. And I believe in the hearts of this government, those are the key issues that are being addressed. When it comes to political inclusion, Trevor, the biggest solution to political inclusion in Kenya as regards to young people would be to actually have within the political party system young people within the top ranks. Yeah. Because, Trevor, I think our biggest issue has been that young people and the women and maybe the persons living abled differently have been relegated to leagues. We are told that a young person, you go form a youth league in a party, women go form a women league, and maybe persons able differently can go form a youth, a PWD league. Yeah. And the effect of that, Trevor, is that whenever we are coming up with decisions, like maybe, for instance, I myself are in Ngara, and whenever we are sitting down as a party, like maybe Jubilee, and we are talking about positions for young people, yeah. If we are in the top rank, if you are in the mainstream decision-making arithmetic of any party, we will be able to champion for our rights there. But I believe if we don't address this issue of making sure that young people are involved within the decision-making levels of the political parties, yeah. Then I think we will lose sight of eventually absorbing young people in the political space, yeah. Because as much as we are in the periphery, we would not be able to make any progress when it comes to inclusion of young people in politics.
Okay. Alex, you are out there and you're dealing with the young people as well, and 67% but still cannot decide the fate of a nation. What is it that we are missing? What's the missing link here?
I think, Trevor, from where I sit, first, I just want to make reference to the World Bank report about the youth in 2018. And it says that the needs of the young people, one, is about education, training, and skills development. Then two, it's about employment and income generation. And three, then we talk about issues of representation, where the political matrix definitely features. So I think first we need to sort out the issues of education, skills, and training. After that one is sorted out, and that's why we are even talking about congratulating the Ministry of Education for the stellar performance that they did in terms of managing and dispensing the results of the KCPE. Then after that, definitely we talk about now employment and income generation for the young people. Then after that, then we can talk about representation. On these three areas, I have actively participated in that, just as it has been alluded by my colleague Agnes. And that's why we took the center stage in the issues of BBI, and we tried as much as possible to ensure that some of the issues that we think are very pertinent to the endeavors of the young people are actually part and parcel of that BBI document. When you talk about economic empowerment, that is one of the key areas that is affecting the young people. As we speak currently, I think the statistics have it that unemployment is one of the greatest challenges that we face as a country, that our unemployment rate, which basically affects most of the young people, is that one of Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania combined at the regional level. That's why we were very keen and very deliberate in ensuring that we propose policies and intervention measures that can actually ensure that there is employment, but there is also conducive environment for the generation of income through, let's say, SMEs and entrepreneurship. That said and done, on the representation part, and probably just taking cue from what Agnes talked about, the representation of the young people is domiciled in the political parties. And that's why we proposed for the amendment of the Political Parties Act, that if you are a political party, then you must be willing and able to show that you have inculcated the voices of the young people, not just in the youth leagues, but also in the executive decision-making organs of that particular party. That in your neck, how many young people are sitting in your neck? That when you are submitting your list of candidates to IEBC, how many of them are going to be young people? Yeah. That at the end, when we are talking about the political parties fund, for you to be benefit from that fund, then you must also be able to show that this is what you are doing for the young people, and these are the numbers of the young people who are represented. That said and done, I think once we be able to set up that kind of foundation, then we might also be able now to occupy the echelons of power at the national level as we are talking about. Because I don't expect a young person to come from Trans Nzoia and shoot to the national political discussion straight away. I expect probably you'd be an MCA, probably you'd be an MP, you'd be a senator, you'd be a governor, for you actually to build the gravitas to be able to push your profile at the national level. Yeah.
And Arnold, this is what Solomon Kuria is asking here on Twitter. He says, let the young people start by forming their own coalitions. They can't start joining other coalitions as a divided front. Young people are so divided. Why don't we have a pro-youth political party in Kenya? That is from Solomon Kuria, the chairperson. He calls himself chairman of Jubilee Party Youth League. So is this a policy issue, or is it just some level of mental captivity that the young people have? Because if they are 67%, they can essentially decide what happens, but they don't.
First of all, I'd like to say that the youth exists as a unit, as a demographic and cogent team, only in all other spaces except the political front. The youth do not exist as a voting bloc. And I'll probably walk back before I respond to Solomon. Solomon is Jubilee. I was the first chairperson of the TNA Youth League. And I'll tell you that youth leagues in this country are what happens to in entertainment joints. You know, like when adults are seated, they're having nyamachoma, discussing business and serious things. Normally there is always a bouncing castle and a play park for children. So you find that youth leagues are literally bouncing castles of the political world. And I'll tell you why. You know, for example, when I became the first chairperson of the TNA Youth League at that particular time. The system ensured that young people who had been clamoring and asking a lot of questions now are embroiled in a lot of fighting. So there were a lot of fights between when I was eventually elected, there was another team that was being led by somebody else and another one. So we were fighting for about 2-3 years, and then we had forgotten to even organize and do anything else. If you look at all other parties, you'll realize that that is the system. So by design, not even by default, by design, you will realize that youth leagues are actually just bouncing castles, where young people are kept busy there as the other people, the owners of political parties. You know, there's a difference between the officials, who sometimes are just fronts, and then the owners of the party. That is why you will actually host officials of political parties here speaking very good English and sounding tough until it comes to them committing to some issues. And you will realize that they parry off and then they do not commit. So the youth as a vote bloc does not exist in political spaces, and politicians know that. That there are other identities that define young people more. They can actually be on Twitter and social media, Facebook and everywhere else, clamoring and speaking as young people. But when they vote like their mothers and grandmothers in the village. There's never a difference. As in, how their villages vote is how those people you see on social media speaking very good English and threatening and cancelling things and hashtagging everything. So probably we need to make it deliberate to build the youth as a voting bloc, because it does not exist in the political matrix. It doesn't, because the youth in Central face the same problems with the youth in Western. But when it comes to voting, you saw how yesterday the deputy president was pained. That is how the youth of this country feel like. As in, generally, if you were to have them in one room and actually spoke to them, that's how they feel they've been treated in the last 7 years. Leave alone, he has just been treated probably badly in the last 2 years, and he feels that bad. I can tell you that's how young people feel. But when it comes to making decisions, they will still retreat to some regional and ethnic cocoons. I think the ethnic identity is much stronger than the collective identity of us as young people. And perhaps one of those problems is because being youth is transitive. It's transient. You're passing and you probably might not be there. It's not the same with women. You know, women, even the one who has been born today and the one who was #1 yesterday in KCPE will remain women until the end of time. So sometimes it's easier for them to organize and even extract some political promises. And that then speaks to what we are talking about, the Political Parties Act. One of those things we are not talking about is Article 100. I know that BBI really tried to try and correct a few of those problems, but I still feel that for young people it was very cosmetic. It is an attempt to solve a problem, but it has just scratched the surface. Article 100 has not been taken care of. That we are talking about inclusion of women, and Article 27(8) specifically of the Constitution is out there. Everybody's talking about 2/3 principle. But you know, you cannot read Article 27(8) without actually bringing it together with Article 100, where we're talking about, of course, women, persons with disabilities, the youth, the marginalized, and the minorities. Yeah. Somehow, Parliament has failed to take care of that particular bill. And I'll tell you, over the last 1 decade that I've worked in the youth space, I have realized one thing, that we will sit down together with all other actors and agree that as we take care of Article 27, for example, we sat down with the National Gender and Equality Commission, sometimes in 2016 and 2017, and came up with a proposal on how young people would also get, as it is actually written in Article 100, will get their share of their seats and representation. But by the time it lands into Parliament, it's purely about Article 27. Somehow they do away with young people because we've not done proper alliance building to ensure that our voice is actually heard effectively. Okay. Even when Kina Alex were doing, were trying to push through the BBI proposals and everything else, whereas they will say that some of us were actually against the work they were doing, I will also tell you that they also did not want to include some of us and other young people out there. Young people who were, for example, opposed or giving contrary opinion were actually shut out. So you realize that we cannot build, and you know, for young people a lot of times is that if you are not in, you are against it. And I think that is a wrong way to go about these issues, because at the end of the day you realize that we don't very much benefit.
Okay, Alex, I'll give you a direct chance to respond to that, because it's
a
direct accusation.
Before I lose my train of thought, I think I've been on record saying that for the young people of this country to flourish, then tribalism must perish. It's one of the dangers that we continue facing each and every time, that when you talk about the choice of political leadership, we first look at the tribe before we look at the policies that that particular person has, or the kind of agenda that he has also for the young people that continue to be at the periphery of running of the national affairs. And that's why we have been agitating and also pushing that as young people we have to take a different trajectory from those ones who have been there before us and start embracing issue-based politics. That said, also on the flip side, it is about the kind of political leader who comes on the scene. We don't want a political leader, for instance, who would come and, you know, and continue whipping ethnic emotions, you know, and continue mobilizing from the ethnic angle for political mileage. That will actually inform the kind of leader that we continue having going forward. And previously, definitely there are a number of politicians that I can be able also to mention who have been able to transcend the ethnic enclave, and they have also been able to actually to pursue and persuade the young people to join them in the kind of the endeavors that they continue to push. One of them is actually BBI. BBI is it's a political project, yes. It's a popular initiative by the people. But you see the kind of support that it has been able to gain, and the traction that it has definitely transcends beyond, beyond ethnic enclaves. For it basically being passed by more than 43 county assemblies across the nation, that speaks a lot of sense in the kind of political discussion that you are going to have, and I also hope that it's going to shape the kind of political conversations you are going to have in 2022 going forward.
Yeah.
Arnold alluded to the fact that when we were consolidating the youth views before the presentation to the BBI task force, we were not as inclusive as possible. And there can be nothing further from the truth. I think when we started this particular journey, yes, there were a lot of grievances by the young people. Some of them decided to say that, started by saying rather, that, you know, for the task force that had already been gazetted, there was no single young person who appeared in that particular task force. Some of them came up with grievances that there is no youth inclusion in the entire process, that youth has not been probably identified as Agenda 10 of the 9 Agenda BBI document. But for us, we sat down together with Agnes and the other young people, and we said that it is time that we move away from a lamentation. We need to do something for the young people.
Yeah.
If you talk about 1992, definitely there was no space for participation of the young people. But the young Turks of that particular time, they decided that they are going to go against the grain for them to ensure that there is multi-party democracy, for them to ensure that democratic tenets are actually enshrined in the constitution at that particular point.
Yeah.
And for us, we said now we are going to move away from lamentation into implementation. And that's why we said that all young people of similar ideas, definitely, would have a meeting, we consolidate, and this time round we said that we are not going to have fragments, that we have this person speaking for the young people, the other one speaking for the young people, and sometimes the issues that face us are basically the same, that we can sit down, despite our political persuasions and ethnic ethnic ownership, we can sit down and identify the issues that can be able to unite us as young people, and therefore propose some of the solutions that we think can be part and parcel of that particular report to address these challenges that affect the young people. So and that's what we did. We had a conference. We had different engagements. We invited even my friend and colleague Maliba to that particular meeting. But at that point, I think he was already persuaded on the other side, and he did not show up for that particular conference. And that's how we were able. That's how actually we were able to come up and consolidate that particular document and presented it. And I'm happy to say that in as far as we are into the BBI discourse, it is not a conclusive process. The process now is at the parliament level. Definitely there are good things that you can be able to get for young people at that particular stage. Remember, even Rome wasn't built in a day. We can say we haven't gotten to 100%, but at least we have transcended that we are 80%. So for me, I think it's just extending a hand and inviting the likes of Arnold Maliba and all those others who have reservations about the BBI process, that let them come in. Yes, we are at 80%. Can we agree that 80% is good for the young people? Then probably 10 years, 20 years, because constitution making is a moving target. We can now come up and again have other proposals that address the challenges that are facing young people at that particular time.
Agnes, would this proposal by Solomon Kuria suffice? He's talking about why don't we have a young party, pro-youth political party in Kenya, like a coalition of the young people.
Solomon is a very good friend and is a brother in the struggle, so thank you, Solomon, for watching and following the conversation. But I know Solomon is very aware that when it comes to the Political Parties Act, there is no way you can consolidate a specific demographic or a specific ethnicity or a specific cluster of people. But Trevor, maybe to go back to the solution to all of these things is maybe to appreciate that there has been a misconstrued perception of what the youth numbers are. When you define a young person in Kenya, and more so Kenya has been known as a youthful country, it's a young nation. And we're talking about 75% of our population. But Trevor, I think maybe to bring it to particular focus, this is the number that, that encompasses 0 to 35 years of age. But when you use maybe a finer microscope to look at these numbers, you find out that out of the 75%, we have a well-balanced adult population. When we look at the 26% adult population, the youth is struck in the middle with those above 35. So we're talking about 13.7 of 18 to 35-year-olds, and about of the same ratio of 35 to 60, 80, and further along the age group. And Trevor, I think when we are talking about the youth, and something that Maliba said, that the youth are not one caucus. The issues are segmented. You realize that the issues that are affecting the young urban youth are not the issues that are affecting the rural youth, or as much as they are overarching issues when it comes to economic empowerment, opportunities, access to credit, but we don't have very similar aspects to our struggles. When you talk about a skilled young person, does not have the same issues as a non-skilled young person. Yeah. When you talk about a digitally literate young person, does not have the same issues as someone, maybe a young person in the village or the outskirts of this country who is struggling maybe for opportunities. So that is why the young people are further segmented. And you know, Trevor, most of these arguments have also been made about the women. It would be unfair to ask women to support one female candidate just on the basis of them being female. But as much as we caucus around beliefs and we caucus around ideas, we cannot have young people and we cannot expect young people to just come together and support a candidate or support their candidate. They don't come as a consolidated voting bloc, as Arnold has said, and the young people have the democratic right to choose candidates who they support, ideas that they support, consolidate around political processes that they support. So I think most of these issues further fragment young people. Yeah. But when it comes to caucusing for the common youth agenda, yeah, issues that are affecting the greater youth demographic, most of organizations have done it. We have youth-serving organizations. We have movements that have championed for common youth agenda. But putting young people in one basket and expecting them to toe one line would be unfair to their democratic right.
Okay. Do you agree?
Yes, because again, according to the Constitution, yeah, and well, the Political Parties Act, you cannot come up with a youth party. You also cannot come up with, for example, an ethnic party. But in practice, that is what happens, because what they do is that they pick a few guys and pad them at the national level so that you find a party that is purely ethnic, but the SG is from Western. You know, that is the home of all SGs of political parties in this country. either Western or Nyanza, and then or sometimes the chairman, but the party owners, and that's why I'm still actually insisting that you will actually find party owners who there is the difference between the party ownership, yeah, and then the party leaders. You might not even see party owners. They are actually invisible, sometimes invisible forces. So you have got people who are out here, like I initially said, yeah, coming out there and speaking like they own the party, but you realize that, I'll give you an example, Wiper or ANC, sometimes parties can actually become shameless and even ignore the existing laws like the Political Parties Act. And you'll find a party like ANC, that party leader, the SG, the chairman, including everybody who is elected from Vihiga and Kakamega. And they're very grateful. They look at you and they tell you thank you, and you can do nothing about it. But moving forward, you know, young people must move away from being just the suppliers of mayhem organization, mature propaganda, and tension management. Young people must move to then a place where they can actually have say in what happens. Because you see, the way we are, we will be here doing this talk, and then again next year we will be there, and young people will actually be still complaining. There's still quite a number of things that have been done to ensure that young people can actually ascend. And you know, we cannot run away from the fact that 13.7 million are people aged between 18 and 35. And our voters, the registered, our voter register only has got 20 million. However much you want to run away from, that is almost, and the people who vote, the majority of the people who vote are young people. So can these numbers count? Yes, if we organize. But do we organize, how do we organize? Because in a synchronized political system like ours, then you need money. If you do not have money, like myself, Agnes, and I'm talking about serious money, the ones that you can actually put people on a queue and give them 1,000 shillings and you feel nothing about it. You know, that's what PLO calls the synchronization of a state. If you can't do that in our political system, sometimes you realize you cannot win. So what then is left for young people? Politically active young people then are left to become suppliers of mayhem, So Alex has to organize goons to probably come and beat me up so that his party feels good. And Agnes can then organize a serious propaganda around me so that then her party actually feels good. I'm using that as an example because we are people who know each other. But literally, that is what young people do in political spaces. That when you hear there has been mayhem somewhere, it's young people who actually are doing that. That is the currency that young people are trading in politics and not making decisions. Yeah. And I'll give you a good example. If you look, we are a country, for example, that is already manufacturing guns, but this country cannot take care of youth programming, basic youth programming. We have got youth programs that have failed along the way, but they have nothing like that. We are now planning to manufacture missiles and everything we will talk about. We are up there, we are going up there, but we cannot take care of these small things. Like Alex said, the things young people need for livelihoods are quite basic. Access to information, skills development and training. Young people need access to information. They are online, but they don't know information on how they will actually get youth fund. They don't know how you can even get a NITA certificate, for example. They don't know how they can actually get Uwezo fund.
See what you did there with the NITA certificate.
No, there's nothing about that. So, but then, so around that information, education, skills development, access to credit, technological transfer, access to market for the services and the goods they have. But on the political side, participation and then involvement become a very critical aspect. Yeah. How are they participating? They do participate, by the way, but not meaningfully. They'll be online trending hashtags and being sent 528 shillings for data. But then when it comes, you see them complaining. Let me just give you an example that is actually very close to me as I wind up on this submission. That I tried to run for a seat in my rural home. Primarily, I've been a city politician. I tried to run in Matungi in the last by-elections. But meanwhile, I realized that this was not even a by-election. It was a national election because every idle presidential candidate out there came to try and test their hands there. Now, a lot of young people were there. They even turned against some of us who are younger like themselves. They tell us, "We uko sawa chairman, tunakusikia, you reason well, you know what to do. Lakini for this particular one, let us take care of this guy. We will take care of you later on." Now, the other day, I saw a list going around of the CDF chairman, for example, the CDF committee. And most of them, except probably one or two, what I actually want to call the dinosaurs of that area. Ancient of days guys who have been around for quite a while. So young people all over online, again, the same young people who are bashing and beating up their fellow young people are now actually crying and complaining and saying they've been left out. That is how it is. If you do not organize with those of your kind, the other people are organizing with the others of their kind. They will always set you off. So we probably need to move away, not probably, but we need to move away from complaining and talking to acting.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're running out of time here, but I just want to hear from Agnes, what do you think is the way forward now? Because we seem to be locked in a quagmire. We are the majority. We don't seem to be reading from the same page. And I hope you're running again in 2022. And what was your experience, by the way, running before? Was it resource intensive, like Arnold is saying?
Thank you.
I know you're wondering where to start.
You've awoken the demons of my past. But I think, Trevor, as a young person, what needs to be addressed in our political processes is the expense of politics. And I think that is what challenges young people the most. The financial manpower, the financial, people are talking about treasure chest and treasure troves, like what have you accumulated? And because through the years, young people have been economically challenged, it presents a challenge now to present yourself for political office because money is needed. It's a financially intensive process, and you cannot cover much ground if you do not have money. So, but the things that we're talking about, having young people in the next and the mainstream decision-making lineups of political parties would sort one of these issues, talking about amending the Political Parties Act and making sure that political parties pay very much cognizance to young people, the inclusion of young people, making sure that young people get these tickets. If you're talking about a certain percentage, right now we are working with 30%, making sure that young people get these party tickets and making sure that political party financing is also tied to the inclusion of young people. But I think when you're talking about the way forward, Trevor, for me, I would suggest that as much as we talk and banter here and we discuss politics on the national scale, all of us seated here and young people out there want the best for ourselves. And I believe there's nothing more to do, as what Arnold has said, coming together and championing for the issues that affect us. But I believe just as much as any other thing and interest and career that is out there, you actually have to show up to these places and show up to these spaces. Young people like to maybe occupy the social media spaces, but do not turn up to actually make proposals to policy interventions, make proposals to political processes. And I believe that when most of these voices are heard by the powers that be and the principles, that a lot of change can be made. So I believe that we need to come together and work even harder, because we cannot cover much ground with the little, what can I say, the army that we have. So young people right now and today should wake up and to fight for young people.
So it's time to show up.
It's time to show up.
Are you running again in 2022?
I just as just as the DP said, if I run.
Yeah.
But I'm yet to make up my mind, Trevor. But I have a political passion and a passion for leadership and governance in this country.
Yeah.
And I believe if I don't get a chance to run again, I'm going to serve the people of Kenya in various other capacities.
You said show up. That is part of showing up.
I will show up.
Trevor, I think, allow me just to say that I am actually sad to hear Agnes say that if she runs. So we have got somebody who is informed, tooled, she's been in this space. She's now even thinking she should not run just because of one experience, one bad experience in Ngara.
Can I do
Yeah. The rejoinder is all yours. I'm waiting for you to confirm whether you're running or not. I've had people in this show who have confirmed that they're running. That's why I think it's fair for me to allow the youth also to declare if they want to run.
Like whenever I get a chance to talk about young people interested in politics, Trevor, I always tell them to take their time to decide. And I think to be wise in these decisions, this is not a decision that I can make on Citizen TV Daybreak at just the heat of it. I think before you decide to vie as a young person, there are very many things that you need to consider. One is how far you have penetrated the political network, how far you have consolidating your voting base, and to maybe take it straight to the point, can you get the party ticket? Because most of us play hide and seek with the party ticket, and we make and you know the game in this country is making sure that you have the party ticket in the bag and in the pocket.
Yeah.
But young people don't have the opportunities to fight and actually leverage for the political ticket. And I think for you to decide, any young person, do not take a chance. Make sure that you've done enough research, that you have enough support, that you've networked enough to make sure that you can bag that ticket. Other than that, you'll be getting yourself in a quagmire of sorts, and it will take you a very long time to recover. Trevor, you will remember the other gentleman who was showcased last week who was selling jackets in the streets. And I believe when you don't have a wider political plan, if you do not see 3 years, 2 years from now, what if I don't get this seat? If you do not have, if you've not made these, in the streets you call them, if you've not done this mathematics, you know, you can be left in the cold. And I believe young people, we do that, we make that error to jump into politics without making proper calculations. And I'm taking my time.
Fair enough. That's a fair statement. Alex?
Yeah, I think for me, most of us, and I'd just like to allude to what one of the founding fathers of Africa said, Kwame Nkrumah, that we first seek the political kingdom and everything else shall be added unto us. And Kenya has been a perfect exemplification of that particular quote. And that's where I find a problem, because the kind of economy that we have in this country has been at the service of politics. Politics has never served our economy. So for me, I think we first need to push for economic policies that are going to uplift and take care of the challenges that continue facing the young people. Then after that, we can take care of our politics.
Okay. Great.
That said and done, in my closing remarks, because I think time is not on our side, it would be very unfair if I leave this particular stage without expressing my sentiments to the numbers of the young people. We are talking about 13.7 who are above 35 years and above, but we are talking about almost 35 plus who are between 0 to 35, who have been ravaged and whose livelihoods have basically been affected by the ravages of COVID-19. Some have lost jobs, some have lost their sources of income. We are talking about taxi drivers, we are talking about those ones who are in academia, we are talking about professionals, we are talking about those ones in hotel industry, we are talking about all manner of startups and entrepreneurs who have basically been affected by the ravages of COVID. And From where I sit, I think it is upon us to continue pushing and urging the government to come up with social assistance programs, especially to try and cushion this particular segment of our population from the ravages of the COVID-19. And I think my last would be that in as far as we want to go forward, the true test of progress, of prosperity, and of development that we continue pushing through PBI and all other political programs that we have, it is that wealth is not in the hands of a few. That wealth accumulation cannot be in the hands of a few. But it can only be assured that we are developed, that we are prosperous, that we are a successful country if we elevate the entire people, and considering that the young people constitute almost 68% of our population, then all the programs should be centered, or most of the programs should be centered in terms of cushioning and uplifting the lives of the young people who continue to suffer and who continue to actually be at the periphery of the economy that we are currently having. All right. Maliba?
I would actually want to say that it is a guy called Woody Allen who said that 80% of life and success is about showing up. It's just 80%. But Kipchoge Keino might not necessarily be the best marathon runner we have, but he showed up. If we actually want to know who is the fastest runner, even in this particular place, it's just to show up with an AK-47 and shoot around here. These guys here, including Guy, who has actually high heels, might actually outrun you. So life is about showing up. Same thing would actually apply in politics. The SAS, the British SAS, that is the Special Air Service, their Special Forces unit, have got a motto that says, who dares wins. I know Agnes has actually gone into a very long academic and bureaucratic explanation on why she might not run and why she's thinking and getting around that. And normally, when you do not want to give a straight answer, I know this thing because I am a practitioner of political comms, and as a practicing politician, I know that you just get academic when you do not want to answer a question. So she did. She gave an answer to if she's going to run or not and why she's not running. But who dares wins? I just want to go back to where I began. For young people who really want to go out in politics, it's just about 3 Ps. Of course, there are the enablers, there are the things around it, but presence, publicity, and positioning. Let's not really conflate this thing and get very clever around politics. For young people out there, by the way, if you're going to wait until you become a millionaire or a trillionaire or a billionaire before you run, you're going to be doing a lot of those long compositions you're writing on social media and complaining about these guys. You're still going to be out there doing a lot of demonstrations, and these guys will actually be tear gassing you. And of course, you can actually have a few guys who are pro-system like Agi and at the risk of starting a war, like Agi and, and Alex here, who will also then organize against you, and they will deal with you on social media as you, you hashtag. So for young people out there, show up in politics. This article, I am running until I win. Because I am a political animal. For me, I believe that politics should be a career. It should not be a retirement scheme where people who have made money elsewhere get into politics for self-actualization and as a retirement scheme. No, 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 no.
So you're running
politics. I am running until I win. Actually, in 2022, I will not run. I will win a seat.
Okay. Matere, are you running?
Yeah. One sentence answer.
Yeah.
I'm the next senator, Trans Nzoia County. Okay. 026.
Brilliant. You, where are you running?
You know, BBI is passing as much as I'm opposing. So
now you started the academic explanation.
So no, as much as
I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere. I'm actually the next member of parliament for Kileleshwa constituency.
For Kileleshwa? Yeah. Kileleshwa?
Yes.
That is you're waiting for
Kileleshwa constituency. I know it doesn't exist. That's I actually had to start with a qualifier.
So now you're waiting for BBI?
No, I know that I'm waiting for it. From where we sit, this is a done deal.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Alex Matere, convener Youth for BBI, Agnes Ibarra, Policy and Governance Expert, Arnold Maliba, Executive Director, Open Future Hub. It's time now for Roy T. Boy on the decks. Yes.